Good day. I have nothing but commendation for the Sunday Gleaner this week for its lead story and wall-to-wall coverage of the widespread overcharging on the public transport system, minus, of course, the bleeding JUTC. And my commendations come not because it's obviously the work of the newly appointed Associate Editor for Investigations, Tyrone Reed, a friend and a young journalist I admire. Reed writes the main story with a play on unfair fare rates and points to just traditional on-the-ground reporting of a team doing 47 taxi rides across the country. Now, so the story is followed up on page 3, and it continues in the paper. Now, of these 47 rides, 35 or 75%, the reporters were overcharged. If they had taken the rural buses, they would have found the same thing. There are some supporting stories by Kerry Robinson, Everywhere You Turn Makajukyo, as well as stories by Mark Titus in the West, Garrett Davis in the East, and also a story by Jovan Johnson, the 40 billion bailout, which refers to the JUTC, the Montego Bay Metro, and the cobwebbed Jamaica Railway Corporation. But I'll say this, the Transport Authority is what really bears investigating. Forget its mealy-mouthed statements asking people to report overcharging or overcrowding. The Transport Authority is the authority responsible for one of the worst aspects of Jamaica's life, affecting hundreds of thousands of people every day, public transport. And it's not just people who use it who are affected by it. Now, elsewhere in the Sunday Gleaner, Caroline Cooper's column is just a must read. It's captioned, Tufton and Holness take with the idiot. You see the Jamaican spelling, of course. And you guessed it, it's about the maskless, starstruck cabinet ministers. And by the way, Dr. Cooper mentions that PNP's Lisa Hanna was among them. Now here's the Sunday Observer's lead story, More Guns for Women. And that story tells us that out of every five women who apply for a gun license, 3 were turned down. There are some interesting human interest stories, including one by Horace Hines about 3 people killed in a car crash Friday in Trelawney. And there's another with light reading by Romardo Lyons. It's Friends in Flight. It's lookalike, 2 lookalike Jamaican pilots linking up on a Delta Airlines flight weeks ago. Then there's an interesting story about Mandeville's mayor, Councillor Donovan Mitchell, wanting that town to become a city. That story across 2 pages, mayor still wants Mandeville to be named 3rd city. That story across the 2 pages is by Casey Williams. Now, it doesn't tell us much of what the mayor expects when Mandeville becomes a city. Now, everybody knows by now that there's a plan to provide Jamaica with new banknotes, with new images to include all the national heroes and the deceased prime ministers. The discussion about this includes the cost of trotting out new notes, whether this is all a diversion, disagreements over who should be on the notes, and so on. Now, here's a man on the ground, craft vendor, community activist, notarius, and music aficionado, Dennis Gordon, aka Bullycat. For him, it's not which political side among the recent politicians should get on the note. Gordon comes up with a different position entirely, suggesting it should be some entertainers. Who would you consider the right persons to go on the banknotes, if anything?
Well, I think you can put a Bob Marley on the note. Right now, I have a business running, and everybody coming to my business space asking me for a Bob Marley shirt. You understand me? Bob Marley worked hard, one of the hardest working Jamaican international wise. So why he shouldn't be on the money? He should.
You mentioned one person there, but they have several banknotes. What would you do?
Like a Dennis Brown or Gregory Isaac. You know what I mean? Those are a burning spear or a Jimmy Cliff. Look how Jimmy Cliff have been working hard.
And what about the national heroes now? What about the national heroes like Sam Sharp and Nani and all of those?
I will put some of those on there. Like Marcus Garvey, Sam Sharp and Nani. Those people can work. But the new politicians, them, the country is better for me to put them on there, sir.
That's Dennis Gordon, a.k.a. Bullycat, echoing sentiments in some quarters. Now, to Frankly Speaking. For me, frankly speaking, I believe we have missed the obvious opportunity to discuss the Jamaican currency following the announcement in Parliament that Jamaica is to get some new banknotes this year, our 60th as an independent nation. Most of the huffing and puffing is about the images of two bitter rivals, Michael Manley and Edward Seaga, former prime ministers, that are to appear together on a new note, the $2,000 bill. But those of us who have watched the value of the notes and coins whittle away under the heroes in particular may see this plan for the redoing of the notes as being made necessary by the shameful and painful devaluation of the Jamaican dollar over these 52 years since Jamaica went to the dollar. Now remember, frankly speaking, we started 52 years ago with the Jamaican dollar being worth $1.10 US. That's where we started. Now, it takes 300 and plus Jamaican dollars to make $2 US. Or put another way, 1 US cent is worth more than $1.50 Jamaican. 1 US cent is worth more than our $1 coin. Frankly speaking, the coins have become pretty useless. All those copper or red money, as we used to call them, were long withdrawn or dematerialized. As I said already on these podcasts, even though we have a $1 coin, it's worth less than 1 US cent. It can buy nothing at all. Frankly speaking, the coins have become pretty useless. All those copper or red money coins were long withdrawn or dematerialized. As I said already on these podcasts, even though we have a $1 coin, it's worth less than 1 US cent. It can buy nothing at all. The $5 coin is pretty useless too, though in places you may get a small mint ball for $5. The $10 coin can buy sweets too. One ice mint, but nothing else. The $1 is going the ignoble route of the red money, as we call them. Poor Buster. He was upgraded from the $1 note. Yes, the $1 note, remember that? There it is. Now, that became useless and was dematerialized. Now, Buster will be put on the $1,000 bill with Norman Washington Manley, who was on the $5 bill. Remember that? The $5 bill. There it is. And that too was dematerialized. A serious debate last took place in the 90s about the Jamaican currency. The Jamaican dollar was under heavy assault then. Economists and business people argued over whether dollarization would work. That's using the US dollar as our official currency. That has been rejected. We have long moved from a fixed exchange rate as well to the devaluation or depreciation of which was announced by sad-faced ministers. So frankly speaking, there is no going back there. But Barbados has kept its currency at 2 Barbados to 1 US for decades. Why is it that we have to watch and feel the pain of our dollar driven down into the ground? Frankly speaking. Now, on that very matter, I want to share with you the experience of Trinidad and Tobago over the last 60 years. The TT dollar, which is just now under 7 TT dollars to 1 US. Yes, that's 1 US equal just under 7 Trinidad and Tobago dollars. Why don't we ask why and why not Jamaica? Is it good enough that in a year the Jamaican dollar loses 4% or 6% of its value? So here's a colleague, business editor of the respected Trinidad Express. He's Anthony Wilson, and he shared some time with me last week about the TT dollar. And good morning again, my brother. What's the rate of exchange of the Trinidad and Tobago dollar to the US dollar?
Okay, so at this point, the exchange rate is 678 TT dollars to 1 US dollar. All right, so I prefer to go back to 1962, which is the year of the Trinidad and Tobago's independence. In that year, 1 US dollar was worth $1.71 TT dollars.
In 1962, in 1962, you're talking about. 60 years ago, 1 US dollar was worth what?
$1.71 TT dollars.
Okay.
Between 1977 and 1985, the TT dollar was stable at 240 to 1 US dollar. There was a devaluation in 1985 that took the exchange rate to 360 to 1 US dollar, and another devaluation in 1988 that took the exchange rate to 428 to 1 US dollar. Nearly 29 years ago, the government of Trinidad and Tobago and the central bank here decided to move from a fixed exchange rate to a floating exchange rate. So since April 1993 to now, the exchange rate has depreciated from 572 to 1 to 678 to 1, where it is at currently.
Now, what has been driving down the rate of the Trinidad and Tobago dollar to the US dollar? What has been pushing it downward?
What's been pushing it down basically is the earnings of Trinidad and Tobago's energy sector. Trinidad and Tobago produces oil, it produces natural gas, methanol, ammonia, urea, and other petrochemicals. So most of the US dollars that Trinidad and Tobago earns come from the petrochemical sector. So really the pressure on the TT dollar is a function of the earnings of the country in US dollars.
That's Anthony Wilson. Now to Crosstalk. Desmond Richards is here with his comments on the breaching of the DRMA by several government ministers who were seen maskless at the album launch of Shenseea in Kingston on Tuesday, before the act was scuttled.
Last week, another set of ministers, another group of ministers, decided that it was their time to break the law, which they did openly. Their boss, the Prime Minister, fined them $100,000 each. Now, under this two-phase system in Jamaica, where politicians can piss in the sky and tell us that it is raining, 18,000 Jamaicans were arrested, charged, and fined over $100 million for breaching the same law. Nobody care about that. Nobody, I mean, we are just cannon fodder. They can do anything they want to do. The Morant Bay Courthouse, where Paul Bogle and hundreds were hanged and flogged, was the main cash register during that period, raking in 4.7 million from poor Jamaicans. The Prime Minister agrees that the state and its agencies, more than any other, should be set examples in obeying the law. But they are not doing that. State agents and agencies are selling gun licenses. Ministers are approving gun licenses for criminals. Police are selling out murder cases. Politicians are collecting bribes from contracts, kickbacks to their cronies, and the list goes on. And then they really expect the masses to obey the law? Nonsense.
That's Desmond Richards. Now, I may disappoint you. The responses over the Prime Minister's so-called starstruck cabinet ministers at the Shenseea album launch, and as I've mentioned as well, at the launch was Lisa Hanna from the opposition side. Once again, the arguments obfuscate some real issues that the society should be willing to discuss. But it is all broken down mainly in those supporting the JLP saying nothing much is wrong, as the PNP leader was seen recently on campaign tour without mask, and more than 20 people were in the gathering, mostly without masks. And the PNP side saying, here they go again, to Jamaicans, and the Prime Minister is making light of this as if it's a laughing matter. It's all so tiring that I can't find the energy, honestly, to highlight the issues in this. Let the partisans fight. The Jamaican people, not just the partisans, are doing their own tallying. Now to Outlook. The Island Traffic Authority and the Public Safety and Traffic Enforcement Branch, PSTEB, of the Jamaica Constabulary Force say they will be embarking on a joint operation to, quote, address the nuisance of excessively loud motorcycles which have been causing disturbances in communities across the island. Now, according to the release from the Island Traffic Authority, again, quote, complaints have been increasing as there has been an unusual level of noise emitted from motorcyclists. And noise transmitted from these motorcycles is a result of the removal of the silencers from the mufflers of the motorcycles, end quote. Says Canute Hare of the Island Traffic Authority. The practice is illegal and will not be tolerated. Don't make me laugh, Mr. Hare. Will not be tolerated? What you gonna do about it, Mr. Hare? That's all for me today. Thank you for sharing time with me. Please make your comments on this channel. Let me know what you like or don't like, or issues we should take up. Thank you for sharing the weekly Frankly Speaking Jamaica podcast. And if you have not yet subscribed, I invite you to do so. I'm Franklin McKnight. Until then.